Well, welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored. I'm joined now by one of the guests at this evening's big White House party celebrating Jewish Hanukkah. It's the author and first special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, Noa Tishby. Noa, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Let me start by asking you your reaction to this extraordinary situation in America, where the heads of three of the most preeminent universities were basically rendered incapable in public of saying that the genocide of Jews would constitute any kind of harassment.
Yeah, but what we're seeing right now in America is the entire house of cards falling down and exposing this deep-seated anti-Semitism that is rooted very deeply in academia, not just in terms of the students, but also in terms of faculty. I think that these presidents have failed miserably. It would have been the easiest answer to say, yeah, sure, you can be a Nazi and you can say and call for a genocide of any ethnicity, but no, it's unacceptable. And I think what we were pointing out to is that culturally, it is unacceptable, would have been unacceptable to call for a genocide of any other marginalized minority, and rightfully so. But when it comes to the Jewish people, it seems to be okay, and that needs to stop. I am very much against censorship, against cancel culture, against DEI, against anything that is trying to put barriers on free speech. However, I'm also all for equal opportunities, and right now the Jews are not included in any of these conversations, and we need to remember this. We are the smallest minority and the highest rate of targeted attacks in America right now. So, you know, people forget that the Jewish community is 0.18% of the world population. There are not a lot of Jews, and, you know, we need to be treated equally.
Clearly, there is a lot of divided opinion about the Israel government's response to what happened on October the 7th, and people are perfectly entitled to have a lot of very passionate views about that. I have some myself. But it seems to me there's a conflation between what the Israeli government is doing and the way that people are reacting personally to Jewish people. And that's a dangerous conflation.
Yes, it is. And we've been saying this for a very long time. Anti-Zionism, so this obsession and hatred toward Israel, is just anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a shape-shifting conspiracy theory. It changes throughout the generations. And right now, it shifted into this anti-Zionism that we see. So you basically take out the word Jew and replace it with Zionist or Israel, and anything goes. It's a very dangerous thing that's happening right now. And we see this every time something flares up in Israel. People are attacking Jews all over the world. This is nothing short of anti-Semitism. This is as old as time. And we have to remember that, obviously, I'm going to state the obvious here, the Jewish community around the world is not responsible for the actions of the Israeli government. But any other country would have reacted very forcefully to the atrocities that have occurred on October 7th. And if anybody else has another solution on how we need to deal with Hamas, I'm very excited to hear what they have in mind. But it's the hardest, it's the toughest. Gaza is the toughest battleground in the world right now. And what Hamas did, what Iran did, is basically sacrifice Gaza and sacrifice the people of Gaza. So the IDF and Israel is doing the best that we can to have as little amount of casualties as possible. But you know very well that this is Hamas's objective, to have as many casualties as we possibly can, exactly because they want Israel to be in the center stage and be called out on. And this is what's happening, and we need to resist that. We need to resist that with every power, you know, with every fiber of our being. And remember, there's 139 civilians that are still in the hands of Hamas, still women and still young adults and 2 babies that they say that they don't know where they are. We know what is happening there, and we know that the West is next. If anything happens to Israel, the West is coming next, and we need to stop that, fight against it.
You're an actress. We've seen after things like the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement, there was barely a star in Hollywood who didn't want to lasso their hat to that campaign and to be seen to be taking part in it and to be an active participant in it and to supporting the African American community in particular. But I've been struck by the very limited number of Hollywood stars prepared to put their heads over the parapet about what has been happening since October the 7th. I mean, are you surprised that more of your colleagues in the industry are not speaking out?
Sadly, I'm not surprised at all. And to be honest, I'm seeing a better response this time around than I did throughout the years. Israel and the Jewish people are not a cool cause to stand behind. But I'll tell you what's even more heartbreaking. What's heartbreaking for me is various chapters of BLM supporting the Hamas terrorist attack. There is no resistance that includes raping women and beheading children and burning families alive. There isn't. And what we say, basically one of the things that broke our hearts the most was what we call the atrocities of October 7th and then the atrocities of October 8th. Because on October 8th, before Israel did anything in Gaza, any retaliation, we saw activists and social justice warriors in America aligning themselves with a terrorist organization, not understanding the region at all. When I saw the BLM Chicago chapter posting that paraglider relating to that murderer as some sort of a freedom fighter, it's such a misguided issue. And the West is making a terrible mistake, You had a guest on your show. You tried to get him to say whether or not they want Sharia law in the West. That is the truth. That is exactly what we're dealing with. This jihadi culture that Israel is fighting against is not just against Israel. It's against the entire Western culture and civilization and everything that we hold near and dear. And we need to remember that. Israel's fighting the West's war, not just their own war.
Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, has come under a lot of criticism from within in Israel. All the polls very against him, and increasingly so, particularly because of his apparent knowledge of the financial support that Hamas were getting. And you yourself were quite critical, actually, before October the 7th, about his attempts to usurp the power of a Supreme Court, which many people in Israel certainly were, as they took to the streets in big numbers. Do you think that out of all this, when it's all over, and hopefully that comes sooner rather than later, do you think that Netanyahu will be able to continue as Prime Minister?
We don't know that. The fact of the matter is there is a war that we need to win right now, and we call it in Israel at 6 o'clock after the war. This is when we're going to deal with politics. Right now, the entire country is united behind the military and behind the government, which is a unity government, in order to solve this. I think one of the things that have happened in Israel is that the conception of Hamas as a body that is intended to rule Gaza collapsed. So we all thought that if they only can help their people, they might not want to kill the Jews and slaughter Israel and wipe Israel off the map. And we were all wrong. One of the things that we understood is that Hamas, we need to listen to them for the first time. When they call in their chapter to eliminate Israel and to slaughter the Jews, that is what they want. And they were pretending for a very long time to want more work permits in Israel and to negotiate with Israel and to have conversations. In the meantime, took all that money from Qatar with the approval of the Israeli government, which was wrong. And instead of building a future for their people, they build terror tunnels 500 kilometers long underneath Gaza. There's literally a town underneath Gaza of terror tunnels. All that money that should have gone to the Gazan people had gone to Hamas. We're starting to hear voices from Gaza that are complaining finally about Hamas because they are the ones that need to be liberated. So free Gaza, indeed. Free Gaza from Hamas, not from Israel.
Noa Tishby, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it.
May I use this opportunity to say one more thing?
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to use this opportunity because I know you have a lot of viewers in the Arab world. So I would like to use this opportunity to speak to the Arab world, to speak to the moderate Arab countries and citizens, and you know who you are. Okay? This Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Arab-Israeli conflict, has been perpetuated and held and flamed by a bunch of other countries in the region. This was comfortable, convenient for them to keep it kind of going. There's a lot of stakes in the Arab world to solve this right now, and in order to stabilize the region again, we will need the moderate Arab countries and the moderate people, the Arab people in the region, to speak up and start doing what needs to be done. This cannot be solved just with Israel and just with the Palestinian people. There are a lot of other countries that have stakes in this, and I'm begging them to actually do this. What Hamas wanted to do, and what Hamas effectively did, is destabilize the entire Middle East. And I know that the majority of the normal people in the Middle East don't want that. They don't want jihadism, and they don't want this extremism. And it's time that we actually start reimagining what the Middle East is going to be like, in the day after Hamas is gone.
Noa Tishby, thank you very much indeed. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.